I think we can probably get started here. So thank you all attendees for coming to this session. Hopefully you have some questions you have and can bring them up, or the panelists here will address the questions before you're even able to answer them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the panel and let them start this off and kick it off.
All right, thank you, Norm. Appreciate it. So I believe you can submit your questions through the Q&A session. So please submit your questions in to us. I'm going to start with some questions and lean into this a little bit to get us started. But again, this session is really about supporting you as coaches and giving you guys ideas and how to solve problems. And the questions are really wide range, obviously because everybody has different experience, and some things that most of us have. One of us has probably run across one time or another as we've been going forward through our years of experience. So I'm Troy Headland. I'm going to moderate the session today. I've been involved in FIRST for a couple decades now. So the Cat in the Hats Come Back is the team I support and help coach with Dan Oakley, or Elke, excuse me. And Dan's been doing FTC for 6 years. I think I'm 4 or 5. I've been involved in FTC, FLL for, again, a decade and a half. We have been fortunate enough to lead a great group of kids and have some world experience a couple of years. We've been some state finalists for Inspire the last couple of years. So we've just had a phenomenal experience as coaches around what we've done. And we want that experience to transfer to you guys. And so what we put together for this session is really some panelists who have taken their teams to Worlds. We've got Jason, just a little bio about him. He's in his role at work, he's a server architect for the state of Minnesota and have been IT for 23 years. He has been coaching the Iron Maidens team 9205, an all-girls team from Apple Valley High School since 2014. When the team was founded. Over the last 6 years, the Iron Maidens have qualified for Minnesota State Championships all 6 years, qualified for World Champions 4 times. At Worlds, they've been finalists for Connect, Think, Compass, and won the Connect Award in 2016. The original 6 team members have graduated in 2018, and another 4 Iron Maidens graduated last year. So he's a valuable resource. He's to lean on. He doesn't mention, I believe he's judged sometime as well, periodically through the years.
Mostly technical, but I have judged.
Yes. Yeah, he's got one of those gold shirts that in the closet, like a few of the other team members here. So Jason volunteered to help us, and we really appreciate it, as we do all our panelists. I'll give you a little bio on Christine. I'm just gonna call her Christine Sonner because she gave me the latitude. Let's see. She has been involved in FIRST for 11 years. She has been a judge advisor, volunteer, mentor, co-mentor, and co-coach and mentor, as well as a coach. She started with 4th and 5th grade FLL and have coached the same group of kids throughout their first career. The FLL team advanced twice to state invitationals, and where they had a fantastic success. Then they moved to FTC team 8686 height differential. Had the honor and privilege and hard work to attend Worlds 3 times. They were Inspire finalists in 17 and 18, winning captain Worlds in 17, and also took part in the first and only first class of championships in New Hampshire. Final year in FTC, I coached FTC COGSET 14-5-22, where they took home a design awards at state 19. Let's see, and then she's currently coaching FLL teams. of sixth and seventh graders. And what I'm proud to talk about a little bit is she's a small business owner, currently focused on marketing, graphics, videography, and photography. She has consulted. She consults with and works closely with Medtronic for the past 27 years, and she has worked there. Let's see what else. She's got a long list of things that she's awesome. So she's been very blessed, and she's been very helpful at first, and she's a great panelist to work with us as well. And then our third panelist is Cheryl Graham. And Cheryl, give me 1 second. I'll introduce you from your bio here. This is her 5th season coaching and helping run the FTC program for the Northwest Metro Robotics Hub. So Cheryl's team is the Iron Gears. They were the state of Minnesota first place Inspire Award winner last season. It would have been their first year to Worlds competitions in Detroit, and she has also volunteered at Worlds in the previous years. So she works in sales and marketing, and I think from a lot of coaching, and again, I'm not technical, I'm a marketing person. The one thing I liked about this panel, the panelists we have today, a couple of them are not engineers like myself and have had a lot of success with teams. So it leads you in that you don't have to be an engineer, you don't have to be a programmer to run these teams and be successful. It is about a lot in my mind about finding right resources to help you. Mm-hmm. So long bios, long introductions. We have some great people for you guys to ask questions. And what I'm going to do, I'm really looking for interaction with the people out in the audience, because we want to answer questions you have questions to. However, we're going to take the first one here and kind of prime the pump a little bit if we don't have any questions today at this point yet.
Not yet.
So we're just going to lean into some questions and see where it goes, and try to share information, and hopefully you'll get some questions and ask questions you might have. So my first question I'm going to ask to the panelists, and since Christine's up on top, I'm going to ask this question. So we all know the kids are to do the work, right? If you've been in first, that's the key point of that. So when we get the game here come Saturday, and they have all these puzzles in the game we have to solve, or how do you help the kids find ideas on how to solve those challenges, pick up something, deliver something, without telling them how to do it? If that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Right away for years, right away we run back to the house and we start making a list of the different missions. Same thing with Lego League too. Is they have to prioritize the things that they really want to work on and what they want to focus on, and they do kind of like okay, if we do this, we let them kind of work it out themselves, and then kind of explain to us how are you going to go about it. Really, that brainstorming session is the most important and most critical 24 hours after the game reveal, because then that sets your whole season of your to-do list, so to speak. It's really important to let them figure that out and then assess it. And just really inspire them to continue, whether they think, well, how are you going to do that? Because no answer is a wrong answer, and no idea is a bad idea. All ideas are welcomed, and I think that was the major success in my team, is that we never closed any doors, and we never let the other kids, like when you're in a large team, we never let the kids like, oh, well, that's not going to work. No, we put our ideas on a whiteboard, we write them down, we take a picture, and we make sure that everyone is heard and understood. And it really is helpful, and I think we do that even in the workforce today too. Is no idea is a bad idea. All the ideas are good, and they're all on the table. That help?
I muted myself. So great, thank you. That was an awesome answer. I'm going to actually ask Jason to see if you have any follow-up things that you do with the Iron Gears around some
Iron Maidens.
We got a lot of iron today. We got a lot of Iron Gears. We got Iron Maidens.
The team ends up, after they see the game, they break down the different aspects, again, the autonomous versus the tele-up versus end game.
Mhm.
And then everything they can score based on, they assign points that they get for each item, as well as the difficulty, and then how many times they can do that, how many repetitions, etc. And then they utilize that to determine what they want to focus on. And something else they've done in the past to see how to build something or what they want to do is look at past seasons and past games on YouTube and see what teams have done in the past, and kind of gather some ideas from that as far as various mechanisms that can utilize to build what they want to do to score their highest value item that they've determined previously.
Yeah, I think one thing just to build on that as well is, the robot in 3 days, all of a sudden the teams will start seeing what some of the college students have done, and that can kind of help form some ideas and, as well.
All right. I really appreciate great answers, great feedback. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, Cheryl. As a non-engineer, right, like me,
Yes.
what are some of the things that were challenging as you started up your team to get them going a little bit, and was stressful around your team, and how did you solve some of those things?
Yeah. Well, especially when I think back to, the first year and even the first couple years, but especially that first year, one of our biggest challenges was just around the technology and, just getting things to talk to each other and getting that robot to physically move. And so forget the build and, having it functioning from that standpoint, it was just literally electronics. And I guess the main thing I would just say is, you connect with other teams, other coaches, especially in the beginning. My students aligned with experienced students from other teams. So, we really had, our programmer was aligned and kind of joined at the hip with a lead programmer from another team that was obviously much more experienced and, a good mentor. And then same with the builders, it's connecting them in that way. It was just so powerful, and it was kids learning from kids. So they loved that as well. And then kind of a whole nother topic is when you get further, your team gets further in their development and you're more in call it your third year, then I think it's important to connect them more with professional connections. But in that early stage, I think it's really great just connecting them with students that are leaders from other teams.
Great. That fantastic sharing there. I really appreciate it. Christine or Jason, would you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think it's one of the greatest things and the unique things about FIRST in general is that kids learn from each other. And there's nothing more proud than a team going back and saying, well, this is how we did it. And the camaraderie is just amazing. And I think that's the most thing I get out of this is that the kids are really doing the work.
Yeah.
And like to Cheryl's point, we still reach out to those engineers or programmers and any of the companies around locally in town. And that's really where they do get their experience and sort of that connect and situation as part of judging. So engaging them to encourage your third year students to go out and definitely do an outreach. I know that was a highlight for my team as well.
Yeah.
And also potentially parents of the students. Some parents may have some background in engineering, programming, etc. And they can come in and either be a mentor for the team or just come in as a one-time thing and potentially teach the students during one session of how various things work, how gear ratios work, how structure code works, or anything like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was great feedback. So we do have a question I'm going to turn this question actually over to my coach here, Dan. So I'm going to go on mute and you can take it from here.
So, okay, so we'll see if this works. Okay, now it will, hopefully, because we turned off his audio. So we got two computers going in one room here. So the one question that came in was somebody that's inherited supplies from her past coaches, but doesn't know how to begin running a team, and is there a step-by-step process I can follow? And so one of the things there I would say is that no, there's not an exact step-by-step process, because we all end up doing stuff a little bit different. But High Tech Kids does have some good resources on their website. So if you get into FTC, you click over here on Team Resources, it brings up this page, and all of these expand out to have a lot of great things. One of them is the mentor resources and training. Put in a plug here, there's a rookie coach training coming up here. And so sign up for that. It's September 26th. Jeannie does a great job and Norm of pulling that together. It's been excellent in the past. The other thing is there is the coach playbook. So it's basically the mentor guide. That's an excellent resource put out by First. And another one, if you're getting into specifics about building the robot, there's a Game Manual 0, and that's something that's just come out in the last year. There's a number of FTC teams and alumni that really were like, yeah, we have Game Manual 1 and 2, which give us the various rules, but how do you build a robot? How do you make a really competitive robot? And Game Manual 0 is out there. It's kind of like a book, but it's, you can download it as a flat PDF, but it's just a website that has a lot of stuff submitted by a lot of different people. So all of those are good. The first one up on the top here is our Slack channel. And so the Slack channel has, I think about 150 or so coaches and mentors from Minnesota on it. And you sign up on that. If you use Slack, for work, it's yet another channel on my Slack thing there. But it's a great resource. You throw out a question, and usually you'll have a couple experienced people that are able to answer your questions right away. So there's a few ways to get going. And like I said, that coach's handbook here, mentor handbook from First, is probably about the closest to a step-by-step guide.
So you mentioned the Slack channel. Can you give me some examples of questions you see on the Slack channel? Okay, so examples of questions we've seen on the Slack channel. Some of them may have been like, how do you do outreach in time of COVID or fundraising? To, hey, I'm looking for, a specific motor that's out of stock. Does anybody have one that I can buy off of you or borrow off of you? It's just all over the range there. And it's focused, so it's people that's local, and they're gonna know you potentially or get to know you at tournaments. So I hope that answered it. Okay, back to you, Troy.
All right.
Hey, Troy.
Yes, go ahead.
Can I don't want to always add on, but I just wanted to comment because I think it was a rookie team, right? And they've got kind of this bucket of parts. And I just wanted to say, focus on that drivetrain and just getting the mechanical, just get a robot that works, that moves, I should say. Because the kids' eyes, everything just lights up when you have a robot that moves. And then you can figure out the next part.
So I think that's great feedback. I'll encourage you guys to add on to share your knowledge, because that was actually one of my questions that you kind of leaned in on. So I'm gonna, if we were to take and look at 3 or 4 steps, right, for a rookie team that they should try to accomplish in the year. I think you've kind of hit on this a little bit. What would those three to four goals be, right? Because this is a big fire hose, right, to a new coach. Would you have any recommendations on, like I say, step 1, get a robot that moves, right? What would step 2 and step 3 be? Is there any thoughts around that you guys could share? Or did I stump the panel?
It's kind of a loaded question, actually, because each kid wants to partake in something and do something, but slow it down a little bit, at least accomplish one of the, I call it missions, or one of the points of the scoring things, and go for like the low hanging fruit, so to speak. That kind of helps them, get them energized and gets their motivation up, and also sparks, oh, we can do this and we do that. So just going for those, it doesn't mean to be a lot and doesn't need to be a lot, but sometimes those robots also they have to kind of also understand that some of the other teams are going to try something a little bit harder, but that team that can know that lower hanging fruit can actually be a bonus. And when they go to their first tournament, like, well, we can do this as far as their alliance picks and stuff like that. So just focusing on that low hanging fruit, get them motivated, because then it will just go from there and it will explode, and they'll just keep going, wow, we can do this and do that. So like we call it a pizza bot. Just kind of get it functioning, get it moving. It might be flat, it might be on the ground, it might not do anything, but then work from the ground up from that and trying to figure out how to get one of those low hanging fruits.
Yeah, don't make the robot too complicated. The more complicated it is, the more easy it is to break. Focus on one task and do it well.
Yeah.
I think that's great advice. I would echo that, is keep it simple, because I think the kids will have, and adding to what you guys said, the kids will have oftentimes the ability to take something and they're right, they could do this, a very complex solution, when they may not be prepared to build a complex solution, where simple will give them a better success and some immediate rewards. So I'm just echoing as the moderator, I guess. No. Let's see. Do we have no other questions at the moment?
Troy, one other thing I would just suggest in that first year is just try to establish good habits around teaching the kids to just log their session. You're not going to have high bars and expectations around an engineering notebook, but just creating the process of documenting what they did each night, I think is just a good start. And I would start that right away in year 1.
So I'm going to switch topics a little bit. So throughout the season, oftentimes you guys are doing, I'll call them design reviews or professional reviews. How do you guys, start leaning into some of that? What do you think is a good expectation for a year 1, 2, or 3 team around getting those type of resources lined up and learning from them? I don't know if I made a clear question, and I'll state it this way. I know from a season team, we do a lot of them, but from a rookie team or early season, probably something less. Did you guys have any comment on what types of things they should be looking at, or from a professional connection?
So you basically are asking how to reach out for design reviews, professional connections, connect type stuff, right?
I'm asking 2 questions really in one. Is, how do you do that is one, and then how many is probably reasonable for a rookie team to accomplish?
Okay, so if it's a school team, and you may have contacts in your school that you can go ahead and reach out to. There's probably, I'm sure, some teachers that deal with physics teachers at the high school. The school that we're associated with at Valley High School, they have a STEM coordinator, and he works with various companies around the area, and he's able to make connections for us so the team can come in and get design reviews done. We have some sponsors, we reach out to our sponsors, and if they're a technical type of sponsor, then they'd love to have team in and do a design review. If they're a non-technical company, they may be willing to do something to that's not necessarily a design review. Look over if they have marketing people, look over engineering notebook. How can you better market it, make it present better? Help with branding. You could also do things for just newsletters that you put out for people that support you, parents, sponsors, things of that nature. How many of those to do? That's a difficult question to address. I'm not really certain. I mean, the more you can do, of course, the more information they have, but the more they do, the more time it takes, and they can't incorporate all the information. So it's kind of hard to say how many is good for a rookie team. Just don't overload themselves, I guess.
Right, and that's I guess kind of where I was trying to coach it and mentor it into a little bit was you're going to have to measure and do limit some of the things you do throughout your time as an early team. So I have a question that was sent in. I'm going to summarize it a little bit. So the question basically states, it says, she has 4 teams?
4 teams, 25 students.
4 teams, 25 students. And it states the kids are crazy, they're fun, they love what they're doing, they're having a great time. But I think it's a little chaotic. And if I remember the question correctly, it's how do I manage the teammates?
Well, how do you require parents?
I'm sorry, I misstated. How do you require, or how do you require parent support to help the team? So she needs help building up resources, it sounds like. I think it was a she. Building up resources to help her through the chaos. I don't know if we have any of the panelists here run multiple teams. I know you have the hub, Cheryl, that you get involved in. So I think the first question is, do you require them to help? I don't know how to answer that one. And then I'm going to toss it to whoever would like to take that on of the panelists. And then the second question, I think, is how can you build up some resources to help that she didn't ask?
Okay, this is Christine here again. Very good question, and I know it's very difficult, and I've done this with Lego League too as well, is I do actually invite the parents to come to a meeting and then explain what the program is. And you'll be amazed how many parents come out of the woodwork like, what? We can help with this? Is really having that parent information night is really important, because then from there you'll have a parent, oh, well, I can help with this. I can't dedicate all my time to this, but soon enough they're there every day. And it does work that way. It really does. I think you have to open it up, not just to the students, but to say, hey, we're gonna have a parent information night just so that you know what's going on. Like, you can totally do it just like we're doing it here via like a Zoom call. You'd be surprised how many parents are in the professional world, or maybe be an engineer or in the marketing skills or stuff like that. So that would be helpful. As far as the 25 kids, let them choose their teams. It's almost, they will understand, or if you want to do an assessment, like who has their interest in this, but split those interests in individually to the 4 different teams. Don't have all robot build people on one team. You need someone who wants to handle the marketing or the notebook or the documentation, and then you need to have another one who's a builder and a programmer. You want to make your teams diverse in what their skill sets are. And really basically meeting all 25 of them and then figuring out how you're going to divide those teams into 4 different teams, but try to make them as equal as possible. Does that help?
I thought it was a great answer. I think the short answer, the question that she has is, do I require the parents to and I don't know.
You can't. You can't require a parent. Parents got to want to do it, just like the kids have got to want to do this program. They're there for a reason. They want to learn. But from my past experiences with Lego League, especially, as I've had parents, oh, how can I help? How can I help? They might help 1 or 2 meetings, but at least it's something, and it's not nothing. But then also that connection with a parent might have somebody where they work, well, I have a young engineer who's on my team, and my first year of Lego League, I had 2 programmers coming over and teaching my kids how to program, which they loved it. They were just out of school and had nothing to do, and they thought it was so cool, and they ended up playing and following them throughout their career. So it's just having that little connection and that open forum to say, hey, come and learn about this, and having a requirement. I think the only requirement I did when my kids were in Lego League was like, bring a food, bring something to share. Cause, and that once they got there and they dropped the food off or whatever, I don't know about in this whole COVID world, but, it kind of engaged the parents to kind of see what was going on. And that's where you get the parent interaction, is just about just showing them what's going on. I don't think you can't require anyone to do anything, but, yeah.
I think, Troy, that some of it goes back to the parents can be very just intimidated, right? Because they think they need the technical experience. And what they don't realize is how much of it is just keeping the students on task and not running down the halls or, wherever you're meeting, keeping the chaos down. So with the hub, we have had it where we've had to, basically, we always have a parent kickoff that was suggested, and just partly just help them understand and educate them on the program more through the parents' lens. But then we have had to actually just talk to a team's parents to say, like, we do not have a coach. Nobody's signed up to coach this team. And we need them to figure out a rotation schedule so that there are, a couple parents there every night. And we just really kind of left it to the parents to figure out who's covering what. And then you find out, what, this parent can do every Monday, this one can do every Thursday or whatever it is, but they kind of come up with it on their own. And then, kind of to this person that asked the questions, they might set up the meeting, kind of the priorities for the night, but then the parents that are there for that night, they kind of own keeping the kids on task of what those priorities are. And that's similar to how we've done it with the hub, and it worked pretty well.
All right. Thank you. We may have lost your audio there at the last second there.
Oh, whoops.
So we have another question that I'm going to follow up with. So in the world of COVID, right, we're all virtual meetings. The question ultimately is, how are these teams, these teams that you guys have, solving the problem of getting together, and what are you guys doing around the virtual versus on teams, and how are you guys organizing and doing work currently? And so I'm going to toss that one to Jason first, but if you would like to speak, that would
Sure. So it's definitely a good question. I think it's a question that a lot of teams are still struggling with. I know we are still struggling with the whole process of we're a school-based team. Are we going to be able to meet in a school? Are we going to be able to actually get together as a team to build a robot? We don't know how that's going to work yet. We've put in the required forums with the district, and I've had discussions with various people at the school. We're hoping to be able to get into school before the robot in 2 weeks, so we can actually build a robot for a robot in 2 weeks. It's still up in flux, but the team is doing at least weekly meetings via Zoom currently. A lot of the stuff, especially right after kickoff, isn't going to be a hands-on anyways. It's going to be a lot of strategizing, deciding what the team's going to want to do for their robot, how to build it, design it, things of that nature. So even since the school year, if you're a school-based team, the school year is just starting, schools may not have everything fully figured out, especially for activities. It might give you a little time to figure out what you're going to do with the robots before you need to get hands-on with it. So we have a plan, hopefully, that will work for when we can get into school and get everything hands-on. We probably won't require all of our team members to be present at every meeting because not everyone needs to be on the robot building. My hope is that we can get Zoom together for all of our meeting nights so that we can have all members present, at least virtually, for every meeting, and can interact with the team members. And then whoever's in the school building, they'll physically need to be there to be able to actually do the building. But we have some regulations we have to follow from our school, and so that's what we're looking at right now.
You're on mute.
Troy.
Cheryl or Christine, would you have any thoughts and guidance around that?
Similar to my Lego League team, we're meeting with the parents via Zoom call, figuring it out, just kind of saying okay. And a lot of the research projects and a lot of the other stuff are going to be handled by Zoom calls, and then a limited amount of kids. So I'm a neighborhood coach. I've never been associated with a school. Sadly, my school district doesn't really support this program at an FTC level, which I wish they would, but that's negative, sorry. But I'm a neighborhood coach, and I will continue to be, but just as long as all the parents are on board and that you can get together. I don't know how many FTC teams are associated with schools or whether you're a neighborhood team. Usually the neighborhood team is hosted at someone's house. And so that's a huge commitment to that parent or coaches together. So that's kind of how we're handling it right now, is just one main location, and what we can do online, we do online, and what we need to do in person, we limit the amount of kids each time that they go.
All right, now I'm going to toss it over to Cheryl. Do you have anything to add?
I think really similar to what everyone has already said. I think the main thing is, we historically, if the team was meeting, right, everyone met. But now it's really who are the team members that really need to be there in person based on what you're working on that night. And then the other team members, we're still, Skyping them in. So they're there, they're hearing, they're, part of the discussion, that kind of thing. It's just not everybody physically there. Now with the hub, and I should say, I'm speaking to my team, and similar to Christine, they are meeting out of my home. For the hub, which is more of, in the school, and there's multiple teams, what we have been really kind of instructed on by the school is that the teams can meet, they have to be less than 10 per team, including coaches, that you cannot have like parents rotating in and out. So kind of to our earlier conversation, you might have a coach, an assistant, and maybe it's one parent. Well, then the rest of your team is 7 students, and those same 10 are meeting every week instead of having people in and out. And then the other piece then is that the teams don't commingle. So even though there's 3 teams meeting in the school, they're all staying in their space, and you don't have as much of that crossover, which, of course, is one of the things that we love about the program, but that has to happen more virtually. So that's how we've been kind of instructed in terms of how to handle that with COVID. And they need to be masked. And then there's protocols around cleaning the equipment every night as well.
Thank you. And I want to add Dan in here for what the Cat in the Hats are doing. He's got some comments he'd like to share as well.
Yeah, so we're a neighborhood team as far as FIRST is concerned, but we're also through 4-H. Am I coming through?
You guys hearing him, Dan, okay?
Okay. And so we have to follow the 4-H rules, even though we do meet out of my house, which is similar to some of them that Cheryl was mentioning, limited to 10 people. Although we're limited to 10 at one time. So part of what we do is we meet a couple times a week and then have only a subset of the people there on any given night, which is something we've even had been doing beforehand, just because it worked better for people's schedules to have options for when they could come. Masks are required. I use denatured alcohol to spray down stuff to sanitize stuff afterwards, that sort of stuff. Kickoff we're planning on doing outside. So that's what we're planning on doing on Saturdays. We'll meet out on the deck and patio and be able to keep people distance and be outside where you get more fresh air, those sorts of things. So it's sometimes trying to find a balancing between, the various people involved and what their comfort levels are and such too. We've got one student that has they live, sort of live with a grandparent. And so for doing the classes, we were Zooming him in to the sessions, so he hasn't had to physically be here for those sorts of things. So trying to do some of those too. So.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to touch on a couple things that have been mentioned a couple times. There's been a robot in 3 days, I think was mentioned once, and robot in 2 weeks have been mentioned during this. So there's a little plug here, but what those are is the game's going to get released Saturday. There is a scrimmage that if you want to join, and I know the Iron Maidens have, the Gears have, and the Cat and the Hats are, that basically says we're going to do a competition, a scrimmage in 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, we'll have a scrimmage between the 3 teams. Guess what? Our robots will probably barely move, but that's okay. We learn stuff, we break things, and then we improve our robot. But we also stream that out. So 2 things I'd like to say is, one, you can get that stream from us. I think we're doing the Twitch.
Yep.
So a Twitch stream, and you guys can watch it and learn some of the mistakes we made so you don't make them, or the team makes, to better clarify. As well as you're welcome to join and come compete. It's going to be a virtual event, so you'll score at your place, just probably similar to what we're going to do for leagues this year, or for competition this year. So you're going to score yourself. You'll have compete at your own area. So just if you hear that term, robot in 2 weeks, robot in 1 week, it's one of those design bursts just to make something work and see what you learn. Because every year we've done it, we've learned things that we would have probably not solved until our first FTC match competition. So that was a long plug for it, but please join us. We'd love to have you learn.
And a two-part question. So I'm just going to yell out this question here. So this is kind of a two-parter, but how many days of the week, or how many times per week does your team meet? And going with that is, do you require, or do students volunteer to do work outside of those meeting times?
Who would like to take that one? I'm gonna leave it open. Jason, you want us to take the first lead?
Sure. So depending on what our school districts end up having for regulations, we may change how we do things. But historically, the Iron Maidens have met twice a week, Thursdays for 2.5 hours, and Sundays for 5 hours. And there's communications and stuff done between that time via our Slack channel and everything like that. Sometimes some of the students do stuff on their own. Last year we had a couple of students that were really good at that. Hoping this year we have a couple of students that are going to be really good at that as well. It looks like that's heading that direction. So that's awesome. When you have students that are able to willingly take stuff and do it at home between meetings, they come to the meetings with things a little bit more prepared, and things can go a little bit more smoothly. But we haven't in the past really required anything be done between meeting times. But this year, with the whole COVID thing, if we do end up meeting in person, the Sunday day of 5 hours may not be 5 hours. It may be 2 hours. Will we add a third day? It's hard to say. So that's kind of up in the air at this point in time.
So Cheryl, can you share how you guys meet as the hub and what you guys kind of do?
Yeah, so and again, this is, it's hard to compare the past to the current, but in normal times, they would meet 2 or 3 nights a week for 2 hours, would be our FTC teams in the hub. And then now Iron Gears typically meets 3 times a week. And then those are during the weekdays. And then the weekends, we kind of call them surge weekends. So they're more scheduled based on our competitive schedule. So as we're coming up on a competition, then we may be scheduled for, weekend surges for a couple weeks leading up to that competitive event. So I guess that's kind of the answer to that. In terms of doing things at home in between, I think the kids for the most part have always done some stuff at home. Obviously, again, the newer the team, the less some of that's going to happen. With COVID, changes things a bit more. But I would say my team has pretty much always done things outside of the work sessions as well as kind of some follow-up and some homework. And I think as a coach, sometimes I give them homework because, as Jason said, like I want them to come to the next meeting prepared or having thought through something or that kind of thing. So it's a little bit of both. Some of it is they're doing on their own, and some of it is I've kind of assigned them some homework.
Christine, did you have a comment or?
No, I've done the same thing Cheryl's done. I always assign homework. Sometimes it's done, sometimes it's not. But as you know, as they get older, they're just so into it that you don't even have to sign anything after a while. And I think that's been most of my experience. Now I'm starting with Lego League and eventually going into FTC, even at the Lego League level. If anyone's doing both, yeah, they always have homework. They always have something to work on. A lot of times, just programming. Hey, make this function or make this move. It's amazing what they do one-on-one by themselves when they're given a task, and then they come back and then they share it. It makes them feel so good and appreciated. So that's always a wonderful thing to do.
And regarding what Cheryl said about the surge weekends right before competition, we usually end up having to schedule 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever extra days beforehand. And the night before competition, let's say it's on a Sunday, the night before, day before is a Saturday, usually it'll be like, all right, we'll come in at 10, work as long as you want to work, as long as you need to work. And so it can become a long day for them, but it's their time. They choose how long they want to work. We don't make it required.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of follow up a question with this. So, you know, when the team compete, you know, what goes wrong will go wrong. You know, it just happens. We've all experienced it. So I'm going to ask the 3 panelists to share a FTC competition, I'll call it challenge, failure that happened during their tournament, and just to give some examples and experience to what could happen. And how did you overcome it? Or how did your team overcome it? And then I don't know, Jason, if you have one off the top of your head, or if you...
I have a minor one that has happened to the team. It's kind of one of those things. They get to the field, get the robot down there, ready to go, get the thumbs up, the match starts. Robot doesn't go because they didn't turn it on. So they have, you know, the thing to solve that is, you know, you make a checklist. You go through it. You know, the FTA there is to help you by reminding, hey, that voltage doesn't look right. Is your robot on? And but they may not catch your robot. So, you know, teams make a checklist when you're up at the driver's station, getting ready to go. Check things. Is your robot powered on? Is your Wi-Fi direct connected? Is your driver your controllers plugged into the driver's station, and are they responding? Things like that. Do you have a ping that's, you know, above 100 or 150, 300, 400? Why? Is there a problem? You know, figure those things out before the match is getting ready to go. That way, you know, you don't have to have a failure where you forgot to turn the robot
on. Christine, do you have anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I remember it being at North Super Regionals, and Jack Rydell was the other coach, and Terry Rydell and myself. And that year, I think it was like 2016, maybe earlier, but the tape measures, we had these tape measures that came out and they hooked and they pulled up. Well, even in our, what do you call it, practice rounds, they broke. So we knew right away that the hang wasn't going to happen, but right away we had 2 people going back to the pit, missing opening ceremonies and started to cut new tape measures or tape things to redo them again. So there's always something that breaks. There's always something happens, but they learn through that diversity, and they learn through that kind of, I don't want to say no failure is a failure. It's just we learn from it and we move on. You will get some tears sometimes, maybe, or the coaches just biting their nails, watching them try to figure it out as well. But that's what we're there for, is just to morally support them and give them high praise and say, hey, you know, a lot of times it gets disconnected too. And that's another one that's happened many times to my team. At crucial moments, all of a sudden it just disconnected, and it's not their fault. It's just the nature of the program. And maybe the technology has gotten a little bit better on that end, but I do remember the tape measures being the most stressful point of my HD 8686 career was the tape measures.
Cheryl, do you have one you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, first, lots of head shaking here and just laughing because, I mean, welcome to robotics. All of this happens to everybody. The checklist, I have to say, second that. We really learned the checklist in terms of keeping our batteries charged and rotated. So that's a big one for us and some hard learnings of the past. We have had our controllers go bad. I mean, so that's another, piece where, and for us, we ended up having a team that, gracious professionalism, borrowed us some controllers to get us through the tournament. So that was awesome. And I'll keep it short. I have a fun little story that, again, gracious professionalism, the team was packing for a tournament, trying to bring as many kind of extra critical parts. As we're heading out the door, there was a switch laying on the table and the kids were like, let's grab it. Another team might need it. We get to the tournament, lo and behold, we failed robot inspection because we didn't have a legal switch. So the kids brought it thinking they were going to have it available to help another team and actually needed it themselves. So, it was good karma, I guess. But anyways, I think the learning over the years is to try, where you can, back to the tape measure, is to have a backup part to the critical parts on the robot.
Yeah.
Not, you can't bring everything, but I would at least try to think through that.
Yeah, a lot of the robots lately in the years that I was doing it have 3D printed parts. So having that backup 3D printed part, because they do break, is also critical. Is just having those backup critical parts that can be replaced.
Yeah.
So I had the opportunity yesterday to see this great FMEA presentation put on by the Iron Maidens. I almost got my irons mixed up again. And I was listening, and they did an example. They did it during their FMEA. And I'll describe the one we had, and then Jason will relate. So we had it was a velocity vortex. And one of our matches where we would shoot the ball into a device to catch it and you'd score points. We shot the ball up, it landed on our power switch, we were done for that match. Ironically, in the FMEA yesterday, in that presentation that their team did, they used an example very similar to that. So the power switch getting hit by a device or an object that we had to shoot or move. So the resolution is the kids came back and they 3D printed a little cover bracket around it so the device couldn't be turned off by a ball landing on it or something else. And we still follow through doing that today. They'll look at that and they remember it and they don't run into that same problem again. So a little ironic when I saw that. I was like, good, we're not the only ones. So.
Troy, this is Christine. For the coaches that don't know, maybe we should explain what FMEA is.
Certainly. And as the product manager, I'll let you. I can do it too if you'd like.
You go ahead. You can do it. But I think some coaches don't know, and I think this is part of that. What they really learn is the different engineering process tools that are helpful when making decisions on what runs to make. So yeah, can you explain that real quick? Because I don't know who the coaches that are calling in, but I know it was something I needed to learn because I'm not an engineer and I'm not technical.
Well, since I'm gonna actually bounce this over to Jason since his team did the presentation.
Oh, I'm not the good person for that because I'm not really great familiar with it.
Okay, then I'll cover it.
Nick really knows it, and I've seen him talk about it.
Should we get a student on?
Okay. All right, so I'll answer what it is. It's a format that detects failure analysis. It's a failure analysis form. Let's see, failure analysis, FM.
Failure mode.
Yeah, so, but essentially you either, I know the Iron Maidens, what they did is if they've experienced one, they would put it in their FMEA and then they'd rank it, whether it's critical, non-critical, and then they determine a process to fix it. It's the A is analysis on that. and you rank them. So what we do in my business, so I'm a product manager by trade, is we actually do an FMEA before we build a product. What could go wrong? What could break? And then we rank them. What was the severity, or the math ranks them? What is the severity of the problem? So you can rank it to say, oh, this it turns a robot off. That would be critical. We wouldn't want that to happen during a match. Or something that said, well, it won't drive completely straight because the programming's messed up, because that wheel gets stuck a little bit, or something along that, well, it's a nuisance, but we don't have to invest a lot of time to solving that. It would be a nuisance. So it does a power ranking and helps you in a number of ways. It makes you think about what problems you could have. It identifies problems, again, like the Iron Maidens have. These are a list of problems we do have. And then you rank them, and that way you don't run into them again. That's the high level of how it works. And there's a form, actually, if you go out, I was Googling it after the presentation. So Excel has a form. There's just Google FMEAs. You can get a form and start building your own. You'd limit it down, but build your own little file to run on Excel, and it does the math. So that was a long answer, but
no,
it's
I think it's
really,
helpful.
really good process to solve problems.
Right. I think it's very helpful to assign team members to, hey, you're going to do this, task this, feel this, or, after they get the robot functioning and running. I think it's a great tool to teach the kids, and they learn a lot from it. And trust me, it was used when we were coaching.
Yeah.
And Nick
lot,
posted a link to an FMEA from FRC 4607.
Yeah.
So it's a great resource there.
Thank you, Nick. You got a question?
I had one that came in.
Okay, I'll let you ask it.
So one that came in through the Q&A. So if you're just listening in and you have a question, hit that Q&A button, and you can send stuff in for the rest of us to hear too. But this one is, how has COVID affected your fundraising, and what are your plans to deal with that? So.
Up for grabs. Who wants this one?
I can jump in. I mean, I'll tell you first, for the program, so when I say program, I'm talking about the hub. We definitely put in an entirely new COVID-19 budget, right? We took out any extra expenses. We assumed that our fundraising dollars would be lower, that our sponsorship dollars would be lower. So we really tried to kind of do a worst case scenario for COVID to protect ourselves. So that is kind of what we did from a program standpoint. For the team, for the Iron Gears, similar in that we are just, being a little bit more tight with the spending right out of the gate and saying, you know what, we can reuse our t-shirts from last year or things like that. Just being a little bit more conscious until we have a better understanding on the funds. But I also have to share that they did a sponsorship presentation last week, and we got the largest sponsorship we've ever gotten. So I don't know what to tell you guys. We're super excited about it, obviously, but it was not what we expected. So I think generally speaking, a lot of companies, and I will say one of our repeat businesses that has sponsored us for several years was unable to sponsor us this fall. So I think that's going to be the common theme more than the other way. So we just, again, have been tweaking the budget to account for that.
Any other thoughts, Jason or Christine, or comments?
Not yet. I don't think we've really looked into sponsorship for this season yet in this environment.
So
cold calling sometimes helps. Get a list in your general region of where you're at and call local businesses. Yes, all local businesses are probably hurting, but maybe call some of the bigger ones too. It's amazing when you get the right person. They're like, oh, sure, here. Just like you said, this is unexpected sponsorship. So really it's assigning, again, some kids that are really willing to just pick up the phone and say, hey, we're a local robotics, and they eventually go to the HR or wherever they go to, accounts payable or something. And it's amazing what you can get out of just cold calling too.
Yeah, so I'll add on to that a little bit. So a couple things I've seen. One is my experience is businesses like to have a relationship. So if you have a parent or somebody that works for a company that does call it community outreach actions and has a department, a lot of the bigger companies have an annual budget right now, and they have to spend so much quarterly. Again, the personal touch that somebody knows somebody in the business. I know where I work, they want to give money out. They want to have the employees engaged with the recipient. So what I've seen right now is in some cases, just like Cheryl explained, I think there's budget monies that haven't been requested from a lot of areas. And I think if you can find the right company, and the key is to find the right company, there might be some sizable dollars out there in the market to get a hold of, because they haven't spent the money and it's in the budget and they have to spend the money. And then conversely, just like Cheryl said, is some might have just to cut the expense because they needed to cut the expense. I don't know if that answered the question, but I thought it was really good feedback. And Cheryl, I really appreciate and everybody the comments. So I'm going to ask another question. So my experience as a coach has been there's not enough time to build a robot. So how do you guys manage as coaches, help the kids manage time? Do you have some tools, some recommendations that would help a coach? And Christine, why don't you lead off this one? It kind of fits in your world.
Well, it fits in my world a lot because I'm always managing schedules. And I kind of relate the same thing as like using management tools, software, having deadlines, having kind of a process to figure out how to meet that deadline is really important. And you're teaching these kids lifelong skills that they'll carry on through the rest of their lives. I think most kids who come through this program and then they're starting their first job, that they're far way ahead of most of the employees that are around them. So teaching them some of those management, there's plenty out there. I mean, I think, gosh, what are we using now? Notes or something where there's a folder and a tab and everyone is tasked something to complete something. Teaching them those management tools. Back then we didn't really have that, but I'm doing it with my Lego League team, is that each person is assigned something, they have to check in, and we do it with Google Docs now, actually. So that helps them keep on task. But if somebody is kind of falling behind, just like an assignment, well, how can we help? That's where the coaches kind of step in and say, hey, why, this is kind of, you signed up for this, let's complete it. But I think just teaching them that the time management is really important, but doing it with grace and professionalism at the same time. Don't ever criticize some kid not getting something done if that was what he was supposed to do at that point, but really teaching them time management and like taking that goal list and saying, okay, these are the things we need to get done by this certain amount of time, and then check them off. And like, again, I think Cheryl was speaking to that notebook, like logging everything that you've done and keeping documentation, because it's really important, because you can kind of go back and say, well, we already talked about this, but it's just really important to keep them on task. And those small little goals are important too. You never want to like, push them down or make them, oh no, but everything happens. But really keep them motivated by kind of using a management tool. Oh, we're using Google Notes, I think, or Notes or something right now.
Google Keep.
What I'm doing. Yes.
All right. Jason, do you have any tools you guys use or ways, approaches?
So we don't really have anything that we use for time management. I make sure that I put a calendar inside their cabinet. They store all their tools and stuff, which has the number of meeting days until their next qualifier or competition. They also try to have a stop build date, so that the robot should be done building by X date. That way it gives the team, the programmers, enough time to build program autonomous, make sure your teleop works properly and get all those things built in time. Plus, you really want to have time built in there for driver's practice. You don't want to have the team's first time on the field driving the robot be the competition, which it's not like that hasn't happened before, but it's best to have driver's practice before the competition if possible.
Guilty.
So
sometimes
try to have
our driver
good
practice is the tournament.
Right, yeah. So try to have a good time for the team to determine when they want to be complete with the robot and the mechanisms, and give the time for the programmers and drivers practice.
Ted, I'd like to cut in with one thing. This is Norm from High Tech Kids. We found out that FIRST still has quite a bit of money available for rookie grants. So if there's rookie coaches out there that are looking for money, please apply for that. You can go to the High Tech Kids website, and there's a thing on the FTC page for scholarships, and then it's the FIRST Robotics rookie grants. Click on that. It'll take you to the right place on the first page. But if there are rookie coaches out there, please apply. You can get funds from FIRST.
A question came in and really asked, said how high up in the organization, or who do you contact in an organization to obtain funding? And I'm going to go on record and say, if I have a personal connection, that's the person I go to first. Doesn't matter what level, because they'll know where to take me in the organization to find funding. So I'm going to go out and say that's kind of how we do it. Is, hey, if we find a connection that there's an opportunity, we drive it through them, because it kind of all ties together. Cheryl, you guys have done a fair amount, I think, cold calling in the past. Can you share a couple things, like where do you try to reach into, and then talk maybe a little bit about your success rate? That'd be important.
Oh, that's a loaded question, Troy. Okay, so I'll just talk a little bit about the cold calling. The team did a great job of just, they literally just go through and research companies, and we tried to be honest with you, we were trying to learn, like, where do we get a better response? If there are companies that are engineering focused companies versus, the Caribous and Starbucks and Subways and, whatever, that have nothing to do with engineering or, that kind of thing. And we didn't really learn anything from it, but that was the original intention. They also started with, again, trying to learn. They went from big corporations all the way to small local organizations. And I guess the learning there is we had a lot of not having success at the large corporations in Minnesota. And part of it is they're too big. They don't sponsor like an individual team. They maybe sponsor a larger program, or maybe at the state level or things like that, but not individual teams. At least that's what we ran into. Now, saying that, Troy, we didn't have connections to those large companies. They were all just more cold calling type thing. So where we have had success in the cold calling, I would say, is more in that local business, but they still have to be sizable enough, right? That they are, I guess, donating to teams and that kind of thing. But that's where we've had the luck in terms of like when they call the company, they just talk about who they are, what they're looking for, and the switchboard operator, whoever's answering the phone, is the one who's connecting them to the right person within the organization. I do think it's typically HR, but it isn't like they're asking for someone. They just kind of start their spiel with whoever picked up the phone in the company. And that's how that's gone. Now, in terms of success rate, I mean, it's super, super low. I mean, I think we've maybe gotten 2 off the top of my head, maybe 2 that have gone that way, but they've been great sponsors of ours. I mean, and so, it's been worth it. And like I said, the one that wasn't able to support us this fall, they just have a freeze right now. And she said, reach back out, or, that kind of thing. Like, it's not a no forever. It's just a no for for now. So I don't know. We found it to be pretty successful. One thing I just mentioned too, especially with COVID, we did also send out postcard mailers, and we did not have any success with that. And like literally not one person responded. And I was really personally disappointed, because it clearly was not some mass mailer. I mean, it was, they were hand wrote on them. They personalized them. I mean, literally when we went to Caribou, and this was a true story. they used to go to Caribou after school because there was a gap from when school ended and when robotics started. So their thing was every day or every time they met, they went to Caribou for like an hour and a half, and they'd always get the strawberry smoothie or something. And so they wrote that in the postcard, like, that's what we love Caribou, you know, strawberry smoothies. And anyways, we got no response from that. So that didn't turn out to be successful.
Yeah, that I'm very familiar with that too. If you have any parents that work at Medtronic, and what I've been working so hard on for the last 10 years at Medtronic is when they are either working with FLL, FTC, volunteering for FIRST, it could be FRC. If they volunteer so many hours, they can log that within. If they're a Medtronic employee, you can get your team back money. So that is something new that I've been working really, really hard on Medtronic and incorporating, and finally we got that approved this year. So ask the students, do any of your parents work at Medtronic? Because if you, sorry, I just broke my lamp. If any of your parents work at Medtronic, you are capable of logging in your hours of volunteer time, and you can get funding for it from your team, from Medtronic anyway.
Just a quick plug that Excel Energy does the same. So they will match your volunteer hours, and it's been really, it's a great program.
Right. So that's another thing of outreaching to the parents.
Sure.
I'm gonna turn this off.
So again, from the cat side, from the Cat in the Hat side, I'll state that we've had our best successes where we had a person that worked there with some experience or a friend. I mean, we've actually had instances where they were church neighbors and went to church together, and they connected us up and stuff like that. So I do, for us, those have been our highest success rates. I think the other area, and I think they might get asked a lot, but machine shops and those type metal shops seem to be good targets because they understand what we're doing. They understand the complexity of what's going on, and they feel they can draw people into their trade that they're so proud of. So now everybody's going to call a machine shop, and you know, I don't know what your success will be, but those type of industries that match up with what we're doing and the value that will deliver them forward, I think have more empathy and will listen and move in a little bit more. Again, I'll mention that Eaton, I work for Eaton Corporation. We have programs for outreach volunteering. And I know, again, kind of in our system, if you're part of Eaton and you reach in, you have some ability to get some funding if you tell a good story. And it can be anywhere from, you know, just helping your team to helping, you know, 4 or 5 teams if you have a hub like Cheryl has. So let's see.
Let's say, do you have, do you offer anything to sponsors in kind of as an exchange for their sponsorship?
So Jason, I'm going to do this one because you've been quiet for a while.
Okay. So we do offer, we have a sponsorship tier list. So when we go to a company for potential sponsorship, we provide them with the tier list that we have. You know, if they donate between 0 and 250, they get this. Between 251 and 500, they get this. Between 501 and 1,000, they get this. We go, I think our tier levels go up to $2,000, and they get various things from a shout outs on social media to their name and logo on the robot, name and logo in their newsletters, web page, small one in our pit or a large one in our pit, and including on the back of our shirts, and things of that nature. We basically offer up advertisement for their business, and the more they offer us as far as sponsorship, the larger their advertising space is on the robot, shirt, pit, newsletter, website, etc.
Cheryl, what do you guys do? Do you guys have a program?
Yes, and it's very similar to what Jason said. There's the tiers, and I think our highest tier is 2,000 as well. I was trying to think if we offer anything different, and I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I guess similar, you know, t-shirt, the pits, Obviously our pits is going to be different this year, you know, but obviously their logo on the robot. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't think of anything unique, but very similar kind of program.
So I'll share a thing that we're experimenting with. We started last year. So what we did at the Cats with our team that is a little different than what you guys did is, and this is again me being a marketing guy trying to create a reoccurring revenue stream for our team. We actually made small trophies that that look really nice, or actually we purchased the first ones that they could put in their lobby, right? So I support for Cat in the Hat's first technology, and their name of their company on the trophy, with the theory being that, hey, if you go into most lobbies, they have all these trophies, awards they have, that they'll stick it out into one of their cabinets or on their front desk, because that was always sitting there. We know one of our sponsors had that trophy there from when we did the first one 2 years ago. I think it's still sitting in our lobby 2 years in a row, and then it really allows us to come back and have an easier conversation. And it also kind of displays, shows that we appreciate it, but it also kind of reminds them that they're helping us. So I don't know, I can't rank, if I sit back and do the marketing analysis, how effective this is. We have good sponsors. We thought this was something extra, and they keep them engaged with us. Now, can I measure that engagement? I'm not sure I can give you a good measurement. So let's see. You have another Q&A? Is there?
I just had one come in. So how are your teams planning on doing outreach in this era of COVID?
Ouch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to go to Jason first, and then I'm going to go to Cheryl next, leaving Christine and to follow up third unless you want me to hold off. Go ahead, Jason.
I'm not really sure we have any good plans in place for doing outreach. There was a lot of outreach opportunities for teams when COVID was first, hitting big, doing 3D printing of various masks and stuff of that nature, if a team had a 3D printer. As far as, our normal outreach has been going to STEM nights at schools, etc., things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't really do any of those items. So our outreach is still up in the air.
Cheryl,
so if anyone else has any good ideas, I'm willing to listen.
Yeah, I'll say really, we're really kind of in the same boat. And I think part of it, it's so early in the season that the team, we haven't even had our own brainstorming to say, what does outreach look like for this year? But I do think there's going to be opportunities to, again, do some kind of mentoring through Zoom, that type of thing. But certainly it's going to look a lot different and be, I guess, somewhat limited this year. I know the team will want to do that because it's a huge part of who the Gears are. We haven't even had the chance to really talk about it yet. So a little bit early, but we'll try to figure something out.
Christine, do you have anything to offer, or I can share?
Yeah, actually, I'm working on a thing with Medtronic, and it's mostly FRC related. Sad, sorry, but I'm getting there, hopefully. But what we've done is we've done a kind of an outreach where the team can do a webinar call, like similar to Zoom, and they can do a presentation to other teams. So I suggest like a team saying, hey, and they reach out to, because a lot of them know each other via like Twitter or Instagram, probably Twitter, that they can just say, hey, we're doing this how drivetrain, kind of like the same sessions that we had when we were at the University of Minnesota, and we got together and we had the classrooms and the different teams did presentations. So I think another cool outreach would just do it virtually, try to do it virtually. The same outreach would be any of your sponsors too. So, hey, can we have a call with you? Because we can explain what we're doing with our robot. Those will all count. They can capture the screen, they can capture the webinar or capture the Zoom call. And that would be considered, thinking outside of the box and really trying to do a presentation. So in the FRC world, we're handing out to teams to come in and do a virtual call at Medtronic during our science and technology conference. And so those teams, they would have to come prepared, or a video. They can submit a video too, and the video can be presented as far as, but I think it would be really cool if a team went out there and did sort of a, hey, this is what we did for our drivetrain. We're trying to outreach to other teams, because they obviously can't meet together, but they can definitely meet via Zoom. And I that was one of my suggestions, and it's actually, we got, sorry, my dog's in the background. So that was one of my, that was one of my suggestions for teams on outreach with FRC, is to kind of do something virtually with other teams.
So I'll follow up with that from the CAT side. So we've had teams reach out to us and ask for our mentoring. And we plan to reach out to other teams to ask for some guidance. In fact, I think we did that with a retired team recently. Was it height differential?
Yes, yes, it was.
Yeah, we had a design review with height differential. So one of the cool things, I think design reviews are actually going to be really, really easier this year than in some years, because you can reach out using, again, we use team members or people you know. You can find an engineer at XYZ company and say, hey, we'd like to do a Zoom meeting and talk about this great arm we made, or talk about our robot, or can you give us some feedback on, we're having a hard time with this, again, arm or intake, and get some feedback. I think the Zoom meetings from a design review might be a kind of one of the easy pieces, because you can simply call up somebody you know who's an engineer or a documentation or marketing guy and say, give me some feedback on things over a Zoom call. So I think some of it, it's easier. We've done some things, right? I mentioned earlier, Robot in 2 Weeks. So that's kind of an outreach for us to get teams engaged, to get outreach to the community, the other teams. And I think we've done a couple other things to kind of touch, just touch people to give information about us. Obviously, we have also some social media feeds and stuff where people ask us questions too on our website, and the team can set up meetings and so forth. But with Zoom nowadays, I mean, I'm not being sarcastic. You could probably get somebody from NASA to talk to you about odometry wheels or something you want on your robot, because they do it. It's easy. It's friction for them to get on.
My Lego League team last year connected with a technical fellow all the way in Arizona with the Medtronic. So we were talking about technology, and I just reached out to him. He said, yeah, I can do a WebEx call with you. And it was amazing. All the kids just sat there and just listened. But yeah, it's an easy way to do outreach. I think you can reach multiple different levels of people that are willing to share, because everyone likes to talk about themselves, right? Or they like to share their knowledge and experience, and they love to see what the kids are doing. So I think it's actually a little bit easier than it has been, because we're forced to do it this way.
Right. I should mention, or I would be in really big trouble after this, but the team is working on their first, I'm going to call it large scale, since it's our first, and I consider it pretty large scale, live stream event this Sunday. So we hope to get the marketing push out starting tomorrow. But I think, to your point, like it's just a whole new day in that way. And in terms of reaching companies like that are farther away than what we would normally consider within reach, the event that they have planned, we have a team that is outside of the US that's participating. We have another team out of state that's participating. And then we have 3 professional connections, one of which is out of state. So I think, to your point, it's like, it's a new day, and it kind of opens up the door in terms of, how far you can reach. And so anyways, so we're looking forward to it. It's, going to be an exciting event, and we'll get the marketing out tomorrow.
Sounds familiar too. Dan, you have one more question here that came in. So.
Yeah, so I've got another one that came in. It's about recruitment. So how do you handle recruitment? Do you do applications or interviews? Do new students join the team right away at the beginning of the school year? Or do you have them join, after competition season? How do you, handle additions to the team, I guess?
So I'm going to ask Jason to kind of lean into that one first, if you would.
Sure. So recruitment, since we're a veteran team and we actually typically meet during the summertime, I prefer having students come in before the season starts so that the other team members can actually show them how FTC works, how the robot works, how building works, etc., things of that nature. We have new members this year, and we're not able to meet in person, but we did a similar type of thing virtually, where the team got together with the new team members virtually, talked about the engineering notebook, it went through things like that. As far as you know, how they should they do we have applications, interviews, things of that nature. We've done that in the past. We've had applications in the past, done interviews, but the thing is, I don't think we've ever actually told anyone no, they can't join. So I do know that some schools may have a thing where person wants to be in an FTC team, they're on the team period no matter what. We're not really that way. We have the option to have form new teams. We had 3 teams at the high school at one point, and some teams need more members than others, etc. The main thing that I look for in a team member that's new to the team is I don't want them to be jerks, so to speak. So I want everyone to be able to get along. Drama for a team is tough. So if the team members can all get together and they have a good time, then that helps the team prosper and it gets work done. Well, depends on how much a good time they have. Depends on how much work gets done. So that's what I like to see. And like I said, you can have applications, you can have an application process, interview process, but I think it's mainly up to the team members, in my experience, that what we've done, whether they want someone on the team or not. I don't think I've never stepped in and said, no, this person can't be on the team.
So Cheryl, I know you run a hub. You want to talk about how that works?
Yeah, with the hub, basically students just register for the program if they're interested. So if they sign up, they're committed to us finding them a team. In terms of forming the teams, we usually kind of do a hybrid of looking at the age, the experience, and the school that the team member is in. And that's kind of how the teams are formed for the most part. I mean, it's not a perfect science, but those are kind of the factors that we, can think about when we're thinking about those teams. And then, our teams, we have repeating or returning students, of course. And so there's usually, 1 to 2 teams that are kind of already established. So we are very careful and more conscious about if we're adding new team members to those teams, because it can really change the dynamics in that versus putting all rookies together. So I guess that maybe happens more after we kind of understand the student, and again, back to the maturity. So if the team that's been together for a while are more juniors, sophomores, freshmen, whatever, then we kind of keep the ages a little more together, even if it's maybe a new student into the program, but they're older in age, they're probably going to fit a little bit better with the older students. So that's kind of how we manage it with the hub. In terms of the Iron Gears, so again, more of a neighborhood team in that aspect. The team has generally recruited students because they're friends. They become in it. They're not going to be friends with everyone on the team, but maybe 2 or 3 students, and then that's kind of how they start to get to know the team, just by hanging out together over the summer, that type of thing. And that's sort of how those relationships, I feel like, have kind of formed.
All right, we have another question that came in, so I'm going to let Dan speak here.
Okay, so this one was, said, I understand the usefulness of the engineering notebook, but is it required this year? And there are lots of rumors going around about the engineering notebook. Game Manual changed the term from engineering notebook to engineering documentation. There's been rumors about it being only 15 pages, but honestly, none of us know. And so they've said that on Saturday, maybe, or near Saturday, there will be an update to Game Manual 1, and then those questions should be answered. But it may not actually come out on Saturday. They may not have it there. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see on that, and we should know in the next few days is essentially.
So I can add a little bit to that.
Good.
In that the engineering notebook, as it has been defined in the past and everything, is still required. It is still expected that a team will document their team's journey in an engineering notebook with the same sections and all that kind of stuff that has been done in the past.
Thank you, Norm.
All right.
I got one more question.
We got another one.
So the next question is, do you make use of alumni as mentors for the team?
Christine, I'm going to lean on you on this one.
Yes. Oh gosh, how many from HD went to University of Minnesota? But yes, those alumni are still seeked out and reached out to, and still reply back to their emails that come into them if teams have questions. The alumni is always going to be a part of FIRST. This is their journey. This is most of their lives were spent doing on FIRST, and so they're always willing to take any questions. So even if they've graduated from the program, they're still there. Alumni even come back and help volunteer with programs as well. So yes, make use of those alumni, mark them in your notebook that you spoke to them. That's really important as well, because that's almost like an outreach, so to speak, or connect, I should say. Because many of those kids have moved on or have either been in college or in college or have graduated from college. So, and they're on to their careers, and which is very useful. I think it's very important to reach out to teams that have graduated from the program. Definitely reach out. And they would come back and mentor. If they are totally open to coming in and hands-on, I would definitely reach out to them too as well.
So Jason, do you have anything you can share on this topic as well?
Well, we've had 6 Iron Maidens graduate in 2018 and 4 more this last year. So the 4 that have just graduated, they haven't really had a chance to do any mentoring yet. The 6 that had previously graduated, we've only had limited contact with them as teams. Haven't really reached out to them. By doing that, some of them aren't even going to school in the state, so it's a little difficult to do much there. But who knows? Maybe now that everything's virtual, we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll comment on the cats and the hats. Yes, we do encourage the alumni to come back and mentor teams and help other mentor teams. In fact, we're as creative enough that we'll reach out to high differential mentors, alumni, and ask questions who are working with them. So they're a great resource, and I think it would be a mistake not to let them share and be part of it if they can help you.
They're willing to share, trust me.
So, let's see. Share a tip and a trick around something you do interesting in your notebook, or your students do in the notebook, to kind of differentiate yourself, or something you learned that could help a team going forward, especially when you think about they're in the early stages of developing some of this content. Alex, if I've stumped the panel.
No, this is my forte. It really is.
I know.
You're basically, your notebook is selling your team. You're selling, it's almost like you're applying for a job, right? And you're putting it all on there. And I really get, for me as a judge, I really like the bios. The bios take a personal picture and a picture of them, and have them write their bios. Another thing is have another team member write their bio about them. So there's more of a connection there. I think I did that in Lego League. Because the kids weren't really, they were kind of more introverted, and I said, okay, you're going to write about him. So you're going to sit down and ask each other like questions about each other. That is another unique way to get to know each other on the team, and camaraderie. as well as one year I had some difficult conflict within the team, and I was trying to really figure out, and as a people manager back then in my day, I made them do the Myers-Briggs test. Everyone thought, oh, they're too young to do a Myers-Briggs test. No, they're not. You definitely know your introverts from your extroverts, and those who have to have facts and figures, and those who just go with their heart, right? That really stood out as a very cool communicative tool within the team as well. And it helped me as a coach to understand how to approach them. So it's a two-way street. I don't know if any of the other coaches have done that in the past, but I found that unique in finding information within teams. Just really selling themselves within their notebook, I think, is just as important as the documentation of the robot as well, because it shows that they have heart and soul into this, and they're really trying to sell what they've learned over the past several months of either building the robot, marketing, communications. Me, I personally love the videos and the PR work that goes along with it, like Twitter and Facebook or whatever. So that's kind of a unique thing that I think would be awesome for new teams too, just to kind of get to know each other.
Cheryl, no, you did great. Cheryl, can you share something that you guys have done?
Sure. Well, I think that for one thing, I think it's really important to kind of assign owners for different content within the engineering notebook. So just kind of managing expectations and who owns what from that standpoint. And then I think something that was really successful for us last year is having someone that kind of owns the notebook, in that everybody again contributes to the content, but once their content is complete, then the section kind of goes on lockdown and it's frozen from any more edits. And then the person that owns the notebook is the one who's kind of going through and doing the final, clean up on spelling or formatting or page numbering or, that type of stuff. But just having that process, one that locks it so that they stop changing, right? And you kind of have a cutoff, and then having that owner that really kind of goes in and puts the final finishing touches on it before it goes to print. So those were some things that I think were really successful with our notebook last year.
Jason, you got any suggestions that could help the teams?
Sure. Pictures. Like they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Put pictures of your components in there, every step of the way that they make modifications to the robot, their failures. Make sure the failures are in there. They're learning from their failures. So put those in the engineering notebook. For the engineering section engineering notebook, you want math, charts, things like that, graphs, that is supporting what you're doing. Even things that you learned that are wrong, it's a learning way. Everything that the team's learned should go in there and explain the journey that they've taken to build that robot. Something else my team has done is put in the section, how to build our robot. So it's basically like a guide on how to build the robot in their notebook.
Yeah, so that's some great feedback. So for those coaches who are listening that might be getting a little nervous about the notebook can be these are world-class teams, so they have team members that have done this a number of years and have some editing capabilities and some things that they do. You don't have to take it to the level of some of these. I think the first year team, you just want to get some experience and get the process in place. So I think one of the hardest parts that we had as a CATS team was, especially the first few years, is like, how do you get somebody to enter information into the notebook? So we developed the process, but I'm going to ask, Jason, how do you get them to engage in the notebook? Because it's not the fun, cool part, especially for the rookie team who are really focused typically on the robot.
The engineering notebook is tough. No one really wants to do it. What we've done is in the past, especially this last year, as Cheryl had mentioned, is have someone be the owner of the engineering notebook. They're kind of the one in charge of it. may take some prodding from coaches as well to have people do their portions of it. For us, it still ends up before everything's finalized. It's the last minute type of thing before the engineering notebook can be printed out. But try to do as much along the way. Every meeting, I think my team this year is planning on taking time out every single meeting at the end to take care of engineering notebook entries so that it'll get done. It may be easier this year too, because we will have people that will probably be remote every meeting, and then they can take time to actually do the engineering notebook since they can't have hands-on with the robot and mechanisms in the actual school where we're building things. So yeah, it's tough, but it's a very important part of the whole tournament process is the engineering notebook. So the team just has to know that right there is needed for every award, pretty much.
Cheryl, do you have something you do to coach the teams or team members into entering in the notebook?
I'm trying to think if you're trying to lead me into something.
I am not. I am not.
No, I mean, I guess I kind of go back to like there's sections that lend themselves naturally to owners, right? I mean, there's, the control section is natural to your programmer, that type of thing. So I think back to kind of delegating out in terms of the sections as much as you can, or not delegate, but just assigning those owners so that there's clear ownership. The one thing, Jason mentioned that at some level, it's always down to the wire, but you know what, there are sections that can be done early. So it's also like, kind of having that rigor with the team to complete, back to the team section. There's no reason the team section can't be done well ahead of a competition and, printed and ready to go. And so I think some of that just helping the teams and maybe they feel some success in seeing, hey, we've got a couple sections done, and it kind of motivates you in getting the other ones done. But yeah, I don't know. The only other thing I would say is last year we had times where that's just what we would do that night was work on the notebook. So everybody was working on it. And I think that kind of helped, to Jason's point around if nobody wants to work on it, well, everyone was in it together working on the notebook. So I think that maybe helped too, or someone didn't feel alone, stuck with the notebook kind of thing. So
I think that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah. Something that we were lucky, which not every team will do, is our first year as a team for 4 years, we had someone who loved the engineering notebook. She didn't touch the robot, or hardly ever touched the robot, but the engineering notebook was her baby, and she made sure it got done.
Yep.
So that's nice to have that on the team.
I think the teams who get that and are very fortunate to have that type of resource, because we've had that in our team from time to time, depending on what's going on. And that really kind of solidifies it. And she would, in this case, kind of in some ways project manage it, like, hey, you need this content done so I can edit it or format it or whatever I'm doing. So that helps to a degree. I would say one of the things that we do that really kind of turned the key, the needle for us, is we started using Google Docs, which allowed everybody to enter. And again, most kids in school are using Google Chromebooks nowadays. So anybody can enter content and from anywhere, any place they are. And the thing we did is the last 15 minutes of each meeting, it's notebook time. You have to fill in what you did that day at that meeting. And that forced the habit. So they got used to entering into the notebook. Now they don't even question it, and if they forget to do it before they leave, we don't have to mentor them. We just made it happen. It's a requirement, and they'll go home and enter it because they were running late because they were trying some special code or something they thought might work. So we've been really fortunate there to help them develop a process so it's kind of a routine. So,
Troy,
Christine, you have anything to add? Oh, Cheryl, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say earlier, I had mentioned how when they were done with the content, it kind of went in lockdown, because the blessing and the curse is Google Docs is that anybody can keep editing, right? So what we would do is when a section was finished, we literally moved it out of like the team folder, and the team could still access this other folder, but it was, you know, a specific team member who owned the notebook. It was their folder. And when it was in that folder, it was the do not touch for everybody else unless you ask. So, you know, just very agree with you very much. Google Docs was phenomenal, a phenomenal tool and stuff, but then having that process around, okay, we're closing any more edits on this, you know, unless again, you talk to me, because then maybe we need to reprint a page or something, but you can't just go in there because it's on lockdown now.
We have another question.
Okay, so this one is about the judging presentations. And they ask, does everyone just give a boring speech, or do teams include video, audio, skits, or other things, you know, like they may have done in FLL?
We don't do,
Oh, go ahead, Jason.
we don't, my team doesn't do any type of video, no skits, nothing like that. As of, I think it was last year, the change was made where the team only gets 5 minutes to present. So your entire season up to that point, and the further along you get, the more stuff is potentially in there to present about. You only have 5 minutes to really present it. So that's a tight amount of time to be able to cram all your outreach, if you do a lot of outreach, all your design stuff, anything you may have done with, you know, for Connect or Motivate type stuff, all your programming stuff for control, your CAD, 3D printed items, you get 5 minutes. And you have to talk in that 5 minutes and lead the judges to ask the correct questions after that point in time to be able to expound upon the correct things. Judges may or may not ask you the right questions to be able to, you know, expound upon your outreach, or expound upon your 3D printing, or your drivetrain, or your programming and sensors. So the team has to be able to make that 5 minutes count. And then you have to be able to convince the judges to be able to ask the right questions so that they can be enthused about your team and excited about your team, so they can be your cheerleader when the judges go and they talk about which teams should be nominated for what awards.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. That 5 minute was a challenge, right? Because you've got 6 months worth of work that you've done, and now you've gotten 5 minutes to tell them everything. For those who don't know, the first 5 minutes last year were time to present, you know, your information, what's special about your team or your robot, what your design, why you want, you know, what you're doing, why you did it, and it's your free forum. After the 5 minutes, they cut you off, and then they'll ask you questions about your teams, or about what you presented on, or something they may have saw when they saw your team walk in, or how an arm worked, or, you know, so those type of things. So what I'm going to kind of transition here a little bit, because I thought that was a good piece. What type of props and things do you bring into the room so that 5 minutes, right? We do this so that 5 minutes tells some stuff, but the judges could look at things or see things, so they don't have to ask you the question. You've communicated them without having to verbally comment. So I have some stuff we do, but I'm going to ask if one of you guys would share something that your team does. All right. How will we go, Cheryl, on this one? I'll come back to you, Christine.
Oh, funny. Okay, so they have a presentation board, and basically on, you know, they'll focus part of that presentation board on more on the outreach part, and then, you know, another part of it that's more robot focused. So definitely you'll want a presentation board. Obviously the robot comes into the room, so that helps in terms of talking about parts of the robot. And then usually I feel like there's some kind of a show and tell. I mean, maybe there's a part that went through an evolution and you might have the original design and now the robot has the final design, you know, something like that. But I think it's a little bit of science, a little bit of art. Like you want some things to show, but you don't want too much that's a distraction either. So I guess I think just kind of balancing that.
Christine, would you want to expand on that? I don't believe you had a
Yeah.
team in the 5-minute section last year, but
Yeah. I didn't have a team. Well, I had an FL team that had the 5 minutes. I had to take a challenge with that. Yep. Woo. What's important though is to have everyone engaged. Obviously, don't have one sitting off to the side, not participating. Really, there's kind of full engagement. And I think the best way to approach it is have your team speak to what they know about what they've been working on the team and know it inside and out. So if somebody knows the drivetrain inside and out, they can answer those questions. I always taught this little thing with my team. I can speak to that so they don't overspeak with each other and don't talk over each other. It's really hard for a judge when you've got a team that just, like this on you, is really teach them poise, gracious, respect and kindness, and class is really what you want to kind of teach them is to be patient with the judges because they're volunteering their time. But going back to props, they're really important. In the past, we've done posters, so there was something that they could speak to later, or 3D printed samples of progression of something they have done, what Cheryl was speaking to. But really going back to having them, just like any presentation, like you're giving a presentation, have them know it inside and out and have practice with them. Say, hey, so can you tell me a little bit about the drivetrain? Do soft questions to them, judging questions, so that they can speak on the fly and they can call back to it. So in that 5 minutes, if they didn't get out what they needed, as to teach them how to ask, or to get them to ask the questions as well. I know this is a little bit more advanced, but when you have a world team get inspired to back to back, there's something they were doing right? So a lot of it is giving it back to them and them really owning the information and letting them kind of block it out and practice, really practice with other teams, practice with grandparents or people walking down the street. Seriously, it helps them speak, and public speaking skills that they get from this is amazing. So the more they practice, the more they're going to be more not scared and terrified in front of judges. How we're going to do it this year, I'm not sure. I think we're doing it virtually. I'm still trying to figure that out. But again, they have to speak like me. I'm nervous. I'm looking down, right? So teaching them how to have eye contact is also really important. I teach FL. You can imagine the kids just look down at their shoes. Nope, need to see. So it's really important to kind of really educate them that it's almost like a job interview and treat it like that. And I think once they kind of understand that, and it's amazing how they just turn it on, even though practice didn't go so well, but once they get behind that, it's just like, wow, it's amazing what under pressure, what they can do.
So I'll follow that up a little bit is, yes, with virtual, I don't know how that's communication is going to work. I know as a team, Dan and I have talked quite a bit. It's like, we got 4 of us on the line here, but when one's kind of wandering like this, judges are going to notice that. It's going to be really obvious. Mm-hmm. So the training is going to be a little different this year. And I think we have a fairly big curve that we're going to have to learn about good presentations on a streaming event. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be harder than we have done in person, because we've done that pretty well. They asked about tablets, right? And stuff like that. So in Worlds, we've always, like you guys talk, we've done boards to communicate information. I know teams have brought in tablets and iPads in to show information. I don't know of any reason that's not acceptable. I think that's great. You do run some risk that you could burn up a bunch of time if your tablet isn't ready, or you need to reboot your notebook and stuff like that, and you have that 5-minute time period to talk about things. So you run some risk with some of those things. So I would also, whatever you do, be good at it and make sure it doesn't, I do presentations like this fairly often, webinars with people, and it's with large companies and so forth. And it's like, yep, we're not going to run the demo. We'll show the slides, because the demo will break when we run the demo. Kind of like the robot. We kind of have gone down the path of, we don't turn on our robot in general. We bring it in, we pull things out, we show things, we lift things up, we might rotate it and so forth. But as far as turning it on and trying to do it, you could end up burning 4 of your minutes if it takes the boot up takes long or something. So think about the risk when you do those things. I think they're all good options. I don't think they're bad options. I just think about the risk to your team would be my feedback.
Okay, we got another.
We got another question. We're
Okay.
about 3 minutes out.
This is kind of a follow-up on this, talking about the presentations. This was, with everything being virtual this year, could a team just pre-record their 5-minute spiel and then be online to answer questions?
I
I don't know. Is that legal?
Read game manual.
Yeah, we haven't seen that in the game manual. I don't know why you couldn't, but it might not make the best impression on the judges as well, because they're gonna be like, well, but you're not practicing this public presentation, speaking to the people live and such quite as well. So I would discourage that. I think that the judges will get a better impression if the kids are doing it live, even if they're not as perfect. But that's my opinion.
Yeah. There's this thing called editing. We'll just edit that question out. And I think I get better perspective of a live speaking to a child because they did the work. They weren't throwing the teleprompter, right? Read this. So I think that's really important. Also, another presentation thing is don't have, even my FL kids, they go, we want to make it to state. We want to, even in FTC, I said, do you want to make it to Worlds? Don't read off note cards. So the content. So when the kids can speak to it and they know it inside and out, they did the work. And that's impressive to me. When they start reading a tablet or reading the thing, I know it's hard for rookie teams, but if they give a presentation at school and they have to memorize something, this is another kind of one of those things. And I think it's really helpful for them to kind of really know the content, but really speak to their skill sets and public speaking. If they did a pre-recorded session, now we're doing pre-recorded on what your robot can do. I know that, but you can always do those presentation video skills for what we have, the promote and then the compass. Yeah.
Yep. If I can quickly cut in, we don't know yet if such thing is going to be allowed or not. I've not seen any information on that. But as other people have said, I can relate back to the FLL world that generally teams are scored more poorly when it's a pre-recorded thing and it doesn't have that feel to it, just the way they always seem to come off.
So we're running up on 8:30. We've had a lot of great questions. I want to thank the panelists and thank the team at High Tech Kids who put this together and run this for us. And again, thank all of you coaches for joining and just learning a little bit, because I know this is a big fire hose. I'm going to give one tip and trick before we run here. So one of the things you're going to find, and if you've done FLL before, they have the feed from, you get the updates from first on the manual and so forth after it's released, and they have some stuff out there. And a lot of times you ask questions and you get the answer like, it's in the manual. It's in the manual. And yes, that's true. I know it's a big fire hose. And my experience is that's frustrating early on. I would encourage you guys as a team to, maybe log on to the Slack channel and ask the question a different way. You might get a more robust answer, or ask some other teams if you get, if you aren't comfortable with some of those answers, because I learned, it took me 4 years, that all the answers are in the notebook. You just not necessarily clear and concise how to pull them out and to execute on them. So use some of the resources around you if you can.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I'm going to thank everybody again and turn it back over to Norm to see if he has anything he wants to say before we close.
Yes, just a couple things. I'd just like to thank Troy and Dan for kind of moderating this and the guest coaches, mentors that they got to help with this. It was great to have all that information, and this was recorded and will be put on our website with the other team breakout sessions in a couple of days or so. We hope to see you all very soon, like day after tomorrow at our kickoff. Saturday morning, start at 9:30. We'll have some presentations and information on the season and how we believe we're going to be running tournaments. and then the game reveal, and then the live Q&A with our referees. So hope you all can make it to that. And thank you again, panelists and all coaches.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you